Chapter 3. Friends? Sabo's brow furrowed as he stared at me. "What are you doing in the forest by yourself?" he asked. "I'm just out for a casual stroll," I said sarcastically, gesturing to my many injuries. He shrugged. "Oh, okay." As he turned away from me, I mentally cursed. Damn, these boys take things way too literally. "Wait!" I cried out in panic. "Don't leave me here! I'm scared!" My tears started up again. "I don't want to be alone anymore!" His eyes widened slightly, and he stepped closer to me, holding out a hand with a tentative smile. "My name's Sabo." Sniffling, I took his hand and gave him a small smile in return. "Hi, Sabo. I'm Allie." "So, Allie, what were you actually doing out here?" Sabo asked, as we started walking through the trees. I scowled. "I got lost after falling into the river," I muttered. "I'm going to get stronger, though, and one day I'm going to become a pirate." I knew that much for sure. His face lit up. "Me too! I'm going to sail around the world and write a children's book about my adventures." Grinning, he climbed to the top of some large roots and offered me a hand up. I returned his grin and let him pull me up. "That sounds awesome," I replied. "I hope I get the chance to read it someday." There was absolutely no way I was letting that precious boy die, not if I could help it. After another hour of walking, it was slipping into nighttime, and I instinctively walked a little closer to Sabo's side. I said, looking around at the dense trees. "Where are we going?" Sabo let out a hearty laugh. "I was following you!" I groaned, raising my eyes to the boughs above. "Do you know how to get out of the forest?" "Of course I do," he exclaimed. "It's this way." He started heading in the opposite direction, and I followed him closely. I hoped and prayed that I would never end up alone with Zoro. We'd be missing for years. We finally broke through the tree line, and I gaped at the giant mountain of refuse before us. The gray terminal looked and smelled so much worse in person. I dropped to all fours, dry heaving. Sabo patted me on the back. "Yeah, it's pretty bad." Once I recovered, I stood up again, slowly. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally, and I could feel my body shutting down. I'm gonna sleep now," I told Sabo. Then I crumpled in a dead faint. Sabo point of view. Thanks to my quick reflexes, I caught Allie's head before it smashed onto a rock. I wasn't expecting her to pass out like that. I thought for a moment, tapping a finger on my chin. It wasn't safe to leave her here, so close to the gray terminal, and, based on her reaction to it, she wasn't even from the area. Was she from the small fishing village on the far side of the island? I wasn't sure whether I should take her to Ace and me's tree or not. I normally slept on a wide branch, guarding our treasure from thieves, but I didn't know how Ace would feel about her knowing where it was. Although, if her earlier navigations were the norm for her, I doubt she'd be able to relocate it. Allie frowned in her sleep, and she curled up, letting out a small whimper. "Mom." I made up my mind. I scooped her up into my arms and immediately stumbled backwards. I was expecting her to weigh more, and it had thrown me off balance. Shrugging, I adjusted my hold and walked carefully into the woods, thinking back on the moment I found her. I was scouting for a backup tree we could use in case our treasure's location became compromised. Walking through the brush, I was startled by movement ahead of me. I was about to draw my pipe from its sheath on my back when I realized it was just a young girl. She looked to be a bit younger than me, and her body was covered in cuts and bruises, as well as a healthy layer of dirt. Her wide emerald eyes shone bright with tears, though she hurriedly wiped them away. I frowned. "What are you doing in the forest by yourself?" I knew it wasn't the safest place to be, especially alone. "I'm just out for a casual stroll," she said. "Oh, okay." She seemed to be fine with her situation, so I continued on my way. "Wait!" she cried out desperately, and I turned back around. Tears were pouring from her eyes. Don't leave me here, I'm scared, I don't want to be alone anymore. My eyes widened. I knew how it felt to be alone. I approached her with a nervous smile. My name's Sabo. She gave me a small smile, droplets glittering in her eyes, and my breath caught. I had never thought it about a girl before, but she was really pretty. Hi, Sabo, she said. I'm Allie. I shook myself free from my memory and stared up at our massive tree, realizing I couldn't climb it with Allie in my arms. I gently set her down and gathered together some vines, which I used to tie her securely to my back. Then I scrambled up the trunk. At the top, I cut her body loose and pulled out some bandages to dress her wounds. When I was done, I set her in the mossy nook where the branch met the tree. Hopefully that would keep her from rolling off the edge in her sleep. I laid down a little ways away and turned onto my side, gazing at her face as she slept. Even covered in scratches, her features were... I shook my head and rolled over, turning my back to her. Why did I feel that way about her? I didn't even really know her, but I wanted to keep her safe for some reason. Allie point of view. I woke up on a mossy wide tree branch, with Sabo snoring loudly beside me. He must have brought me here after I passed out. I was also bandaged up. I stared at the broad canopy of leaves overhead and watched as a small yellow bird landed on a branch far above. It was peaceful. Oi, Sabo! I jolted at the sound of Ace's voice from below. Sabo woke with a start and peered over the edge of the branch, grinning. I tried my best to stay out of sight. Hey, Ace, Sabo said, climbing down. Sorry, I had a late night. I found a girl lost in the forest. Oh, crap. I could picture the pinched scowl on Ace's face. A girl? He asked. Yeah. Sabo called up to me. Come on, Allie, come meet my friend Ace. I released a sigh. I couldn't very well hide any longer. I reluctantly emerged from my concealment and joined them on the ground. Yo, I said, half raising a hand in greeting. Shock showed across Ace's features, and I thought I saw a hint of guilt flash in his eyes as he assessed my injuries. It was Luffy's fault, he blurted out. Then he turned away slightly, crossing his arms. Anyways, I'm not going to apologize. I shrugged. That's okay. I wasn't going to blame you. He already had enough weighing on him. Sabo was looking back and forth between the two of us, eyes wide. You guys know each other? Not really, I said with another shrug. This is actually the first time we've spoken. She arrived with Luffy, Ace added. I was struck with a thought, and I turned toward Ace. Hey, do you know how to get back to Dadan's? He just scowled and pointed into the forest, and I grinned at him. Good, then you can help me get back later. His scowl deepened. I'm not helping you. Figure it out yourself. I puffed out my cheeks. If I could figure it out, I wouldn't have been wandering around for 13 days, I said, throwing my hands in the air. Sabo nodded along solemnly. He knew firsthand how bad my sense of direction was. Then, for good measure, I added, You're a doofus. Sabo burst into laughter, while Ace turned red. What did you call me? He shouted indignantly. Then he huffed, turning away. Whatever, it's not like I care what you think anyway. I narrowed my eyes. Strange. That comment would have gotten Luffy punched in an instant. Don't tell me he refuses to hit me because I'm a girl. Coward, I taunted. What? He roared. Again, he deflated soon afterward. Hit me, you coward, I said coldly, getting annoyed. Are you afraid to hit me? Do you think I'm weak? No, that's stupid, he muttered, refusing to meet my gaze. Then why? I demanded, entering his personal space. You'll hit Luffy. You'll hit Sabo. Why won't you hit me? I took a step forward with each word, forcing him to back up against a tree. Because I don't want to hurt you, he finally yelled. My eyes widened and I said, Oh. Then I doubled over in laughter. It seemed ludicrous at the moment. This sweet little angry boy, whose future death caused me to bawl my eyes out for 3 days straight, didn't want to cause me pain. Oblivious child, you've caused me the worst pain. I sobered up, and with full seriousness, staring him straight in the eyes, I said, "You don't want to hurt me? Then don't die." I turned around and climbed back into the tree, waving my hand in dismissal without turning back. "Now go off and do whatever. I'll wait here for you guys." Ace point of view. I blinked, stunned, as Allie disappeared back into our tree. Don't die. There was no way she could possibly know how much those 2 little words meant to me, a child whose very existence was considered a sin. "She's scary," I heard Sabo whisper, and I nodded. We both scampered off to the gray terminal before she changed her mind. As we ran, Sabo added, "You know, she told me she wants to be a pirate too." I shivered. "After seeing her scary side," I replied, "I think she could." When we reached the tree line, Sabo and I split off to find our victims for the day, and we met up back at the tree before sundown. Allie was asleep, so we quietly stashed our loot before waking her up. She yawned, stretching her arms over her head. "Back already?" I frowned. "It's been 10 hours. "Oh, really?" Her stomach growled loudly, and I instinctively reached out a hand to steady her as her knees buckled. "Sorry," she said, face pale. "I've been living off blackberries for the past 13 days. No meat for almost 2 weeks? That sounded like torture. I set my jaw and offered my back to her. "Get on," I ordered. She tentatively climbed onto my back, and I scooped an arm under each of her legs, calling out a farewell to Sabo as I took off in a trot towards Dadan's. Allie was incredibly light. I could barely feel her weight. As I leapt over roots and skirted around boulders, I was struck by a thought. "Aren't you worried about Luffy?" I felt her shrug. "Not particularly." "But aren't you his sister?" I asked incredulously. She sighed, resting her chin on my shoulder. "I'll tell you something, Ace. That day that Luffy and I arrived was also the first time I ever met him. We're not actually related. Garp rescued me from slavers a month ago, and I have no family, so I begged him to take me with him. I'm nobody important." My face darkened. She was all alone, too. We traveled the rest of the way in silence, and I stopped just before the clearing to let her climb down. I didn't want anyone else seeing me like that. "Thanks," she said softly. I scowled. "Don't make a big deal out of it. I just didn't want you slowing me down." She gave me a smile that implied she didn't believe me. Then she turned and crossed the clearing. As Allie entered the house, I heard something crash to the floor, and several bandits cried out, "Allie, you're alive?" Huffing out a laugh, I dashed back into the forest to catch something big for dinner. Allie was hungry, after all.